Hello, everyone, and welcome. Let's just wait a few seconds before we start. Hope you can hear me and see me well. And we'll be talking about presentation skills today. So just a couple of minutes to get us started. While we are beginning, please tell me how you're feeling, how you're doing. How is everything with you? How's life? Would be happy to hear that. Or read, right? Rather read in the comments. And a few people have joined, which is great. And also, as we are starting, feel free to write how often you have to give presentations in English. Have you ever given a presentation in English? Tell me. And when is your next presentation in English? Are you going to do it online or offline, face-to-face? And yeah, just share your experience while we are waiting for a couple of minutes. And while you're sharing your experience, I'll just tell you a few things that we'll be talking about today. And we'll start by, well, we'll go in more or less chronological order today, and we'll talk about things that you need to do before your presentation and during the presentation. Well, and a couple of words what you should do after the presentation. But generally, we'll focus on how to prepare for it and what to do during your presentation. Great. So whenever you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. And well, let's get started. So let's start by talking about what you should do before you even start thinking about, like, start preparing your presentation, right? Even before you start, what should you do? Any suggestions here? Feel free to write them in the comments and I'll be happy to read them. Hello, those who are joining, and it's great to see you and have you here with me today. And right, so let's just start talking about it. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to write them and in the comments at any point. We'll be happy to hear and share with you. Right, so even before you start a presentation, one thing you should probably think about first is one or a couple of things you need to think about. Hi, Mervid. Where did it go? There we go. Is first of all, you should set your objective. Just like with any goal, with anything you do, start with your objective. Decide what's your ultimate goal. What do you want to achieve by the end of, in our case, presentation? And what is the purpose? What is the reason for your presentation today? Like me today, I'd like to help you get started or get going with your presentations in English, right? So set your objective. It's really important to know why you're doing this presentation. Okay, next step is know your audience. First, yes, you have the objective and you know why you want to do this presentation, but you also need to know your audience. Who are you going to be presenting to? Who are you going to be talking to? Are they going to be business professionals or, I don't know, medical experts or teenagers, right? So depending on your audience, you will probably change make slight adjustment in your presentation. And finally, you should definitely think about your message. What is the message that you have in your presentation, right? So we have the objective, what you want to achieve, but also you should have your main message in the presentations, in the presentation that you have. What do you want participants to hear during your presentation? And for those who just joined, I'll just say that, remind that we are talking about how to give presentations in English, and we'll talk about some general tips and also look at some language for presentations, some really nice phrases that you can use. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to write them in the comments under our live video, and I'll be happy to react to them, read them, answer any questions at any point. So we just started. And to recap, for those who just joined, we're looking at what you should do before even starting. Set your objective, know your audience, who you're going to talk to, and think about the message in your presentation. Also think like nowadays, because a lot of people have moved online, and just like us at Wall Street English, we are now 100% online. A lot of companies have also moved online. And a lot of, think about whether you will be delivering it online or face-to-face. It is a little bit different, because when you're talking to people online, you cannot see them, you cannot see their reaction. So it can be a little bit difficult, but very active ones always write comments, so that's great. Right, so 3 things you do before you start, and then you move to, just a second, you move to preparation. Of course, you need to prepare yourself. Hello, Sabeh. And you need to prepare your slides. Of course, some presentations or some talks can go without slides. That's also possible. But for most of the time, especially in the business world and also for students, right, we prepare our PowerPoint, we prepare our presentations, and we have our slides so that it's easy for participants, for the audience to follow what you're saying. So prepare yourself and your slides, and let's have a look at what it means, right? How you do that, how you prepare yourself. First of all, plan your presentation. Even if it's a talk and you don't have any slides, you should definitely plan it. And the 3 main points are opening, body of the presentation, and the short summary or conclusion. These are the 3 main parts. But of course, your opening will be quite short and your summary will probably be quite short. However, the body can be longer, and it also needs to be divided into sections or parts. So make sure to have a clear plan. When things are organized, they are easy to follow and easy to understand. And this is what you want. You want your audience to get your message, right? So make sure to plan ahead. Great. And once you've planned, remember the 10, 20, 30 rule for your slides. Have you ever heard of this rule? I'm going to wait a minute and just see in your comments if you ever prepared, if you've ever heard of this rule, and if you know what it is. Feel free to write in the comments. I will be happy to hear from you if you know what it is. What is the 10, 20, 30 rule? It is really, actually, it's quite cool. And I've known it for some time and used it. And I really like it because it makes, all of a sudden, it makes everything very easy and clear. So if you know what this rule is, feel free to write it in the comments. Otherwise, I'll tell you in a couple of seconds. Just wait a second. Okay, somebody said no. By the way, so while you're writing, I'll just remind those who just joined us that we're talking about how to prepare a presentation in English, and we'll look at some general tips as well as some language. And yeah, so people are saying no, that they haven't heard of this 10, 20, 30 rule. So let me 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. There is definitely the word minutes. That's great. Okay, so let's start. And 10 is the number of slides. You should not have more than 10 slides. This is, we're talking about generally presentations. 20 is the number of minutes. So this is how long your presentation should be. Why? Because for anybody listening to a person without any interaction, just listening, the attention span is not very long, unfortunately, and it's getting shorter and shorter every day with different generations, right? So now the attention span is not very long, and 20 minutes is how long anyone can hold attention without much interaction. Of course, if you are a lecturer, it will be different if you're a lecturer at the university, but we're here talking about business presentations and mainly business presentations. So 10 slides, 20 minutes. And what do you think 30 is? Yeah, Dele, thank you. Yes, for the comment about the text to keeping the text to a minimum. We will talk about it later. So 10 slides, 20 minutes, and 30 is for the size of the font that you use. So the font is how big your letters are. So they can be very big or they can be very small. So 30 is the smallest size of font you should use for your presentation. Just to give you an idea, the title of my presentation here is font 60. The size of the font is 60, and the size of the font here is 40. So the minimum you should use is 30 to make it clear and easy to follow and easy to read. Great. So let's continue. So here is the 10, 20, 30 rule. Pay attention, and I will ask you about it at the end. Great. So carry on. Now, keep your visuals very simple. That is something that Delia just mentioned. Keep your text, keep the text to a minimum, exactly. Don't write too much on the slides, because when you write a lot, then you are very likely to start reading of the screen and reading of the slides. And then why would you need to do that, right? People can read. They don't come to your presentation to read, right? Or for them, because they can't read, but they want to hear you, they want to hear your opinion, they want to hear what you have to say, and the visual is there to support them and to help their attention, not to have all the information on the slides. So keep visuals very simple. Yes, exactly, Nabil. There shouldn't be a lot of information on the slides. Very simple, very clear. And there can be some information, but not too much. Otherwise, people will be looking at the slides and not at you and not listening. They will be reading, they will be studying the slides, especially the visual people, right? There are people who understand better when listening and people who understand better while reading. So those are yes, so for those that they can get distracted if you have too much information. Hello, Hedy. You asked about colors. What about colors? So, what do you mean about what about colors? What about them? Again, the general rule is keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible. Your slides, your presentation, and your what you're doing. The use simple language. Let's do not oversimplify it, of course, but use the language that will easily, especially when you're speaking English and especially when you have the audience of non-native speakers. Keep your language simple. Do not overcomplicate things. Think about, or if you, for example, presenting your project to a banker, right, or to a group of investors, you don't know the background of each, well, you probably will, but you don't know in detail the background of each investor, and make sure to keep your language simple, concise, and clear. Yes, and the same goes for the colors. Don't use too many colors, right? You know, in clothes, there is, I'm not sure, I'm not a big of fashion fan, but I heard that there is a rule of three. You shouldn't wear more than 3 different colors, right? So general rule. I don't know if it still exists, but that's something that my mom taught me. So I think for a presentation, it's something similar. Do not use too many colors, maybe 3 main colors, and that's it. Fantastic. So, and as Lobna said, your presentation should be just your support. Exactly. It is the support that you receive. The rest is, it's not all the information there that you keep there. And prepare your questions and answers. Think in advance what questions the audience might ask you. Think about how you might answer that. So it's really important, because I remember when I was given one of my first presentations, and I didn't think about the questions I would be asked. And then I was not bombarded, but I had quite a few questions, and it took me a while to give a clear answer to those questions. But little by little, I started thinking about, okay, even while I'm preparing my slides, I think what kind of questions the people might ask me, or what might they say about that. So when preparing, I think about what questions they might be asked and how I would answer those questions. So Sebastian, yes, colors of letters and slide background. Again, it depends on know your audience. What is your audience? If you, like, once I attended a workshop on how to teach children, right? And excuse me. And children like colors. So, and the presentation was about teaching children. So it was very nice. It was very colorful, very bright, and it just because the audience was the teachers of children. So that was suitable for that audience. But bright colors, kind of, let's say, not childish, but really bright colors sometimes can be distracting if you're going to a business environment. So I'm sure there are plenty of articles online on which colors to use, which color scheme to use. So you can research it in detail. So yes, this is definitely important to research the colors in detail, because again, different colors have different messages, right? So if you look at different brands, the color, they have all different messages. We look at the colors and think about different things, right? If we talk about something environmental, right, an environmental project, then most likely you will do something in green, right? Because this is what the message you want to have. So don't have too many, to have a simple advice, don't have too many colors. And as we go back to one of the first slides here today, before your presentation, set your objective, know your audience, and think of your main message. And based on that, choose the color and the scheme for your presentation. And make sure to stay to keep the template the same. So don't do one slide in one color scheme and then another slide in a different color scheme. So be consistent. Great. So we need colors for highlighting some things that are important, or graphics, of course, yes. But again, for us at Wall Street English, we have our color scheme and we use those colors and we stick to them. So I'm sure you can find, whenever you use a PowerPoint, usually has the templates, right? So you can choose a template and then there is a color scheme there, and you just use those colors, so you don't add anything else. There are usually about 6 different colors for different reasons, and if you use for different purposes, sorry. And if you, for example, insert a graph or a diagram or anything else, you will have it immediately in that color scheme, right? They're usually called themes on the PowerPoint presentation. I think they're called themes. So there we go. But keep it simple. That's the main. Keep it simple. Great. So, and of course, after you've planned and you've prepared everything, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Exactly. Practice what you're going to say, especially if this is your first presentation. Practice makes perfect. And rehearse alone. I remember when I prepared my first presentation, I recorded myself and I listened to myself to make sure that I don't have too much information. I don't have too many slides. I don't talk too fast. I don't talk too slowly. And I definitely heard. So I rehearsed once or twice by myself, right? And then I also rehearsed with my friend or my husband. I can't remember at that time. Just practiced what I was saying, and it helped me because it built my confidence. I knew exactly what I was going to say and when, and it really helped me. So I was more confident during the presentation, which leads me to the next part. And let's talk about what you should or shouldn't do during the presentation. Mainly should do, right? We all know some things that we shouldn't do, but let's summarize and look at things that we should do during our presentation. Great. So first of all, remember how we started. Again, for those who just joined, we are talking about presentations, and we're looking at general tips on how to give the presentation, and we will look at some of the language that you can use for your next presentation. So as we said, you need to set the objective, know your audience, and I hope that motorcycle that just went past my house was not too noisy. Sorry about that, guys. So you should know your audience, you should set an objective and have a clear message. So it's all about the audience. So it is also important to connect with your audience. So how can you connect? What does it mean, connect with your audience, and how can you do that? Feel free to write it in the comments. What can you use to connect with your audience, or what is important to connect with your audience? What do you think? Write it in the comments. And this is my me trying to connect with you guys and hear what your opinion is, right? Know the different profile of the audience, yes, of course. But during the presentation, think about while you're already presenting, how can you connect with the audience? During the presentation, how can you establish this connection between you and the people who are watching you? And oh well, Let me just get started. First of all, it's important to maintain eye contact, right? When you are giving a presentation, make sure to make eye contact with people in your audience. Do not always look at the computer or the slides or somewhere else, the window. Make eye contact. And yes, so exactly, Lobna just said, with eyes, and yes, making eye contact. And yes, so, and also they say, when you give a presentation, don't always look at one person. Look to your left, look in the middle, look to your right. Find those, what I my personal trick, yes, for me, is that I often find people who, there are people who are just listening with a serious face and they're not really reacting, and there are people who are like nodding or smiling, so they're like naturally reacting to things. So I often find those people who are nodding or who somehow reacting to my presentation, and try to keep looking at them, because that this way I can see that people are watching and listening. So that's something. And eye contact with different people in the audience, because as soon as you make eye contact with them, they feel that they're not just the crowd, that you are looking specifically at them, and they are connected with you. Great. So let's say what else you mentioned here about connecting with the audience is introduce yourself, and then everyone else. Yeah, so definitely you'll introduce yourself and you say who you are and why you're here. And what Delia said, important to focus on their needs for the presentation. And yes, exactly. It's important to know the needs of your audience, and you can, if you know the needs of your audience, then it's easier to connect, because you can relate to that. So for example, again, if you know that you have business professionals there, or let's say you are talking to the investors, make sure that to mention, if you know something about your investor, try to mention that and say how your project or what you're doing is related to their life. Great. The other thing Deli said is smile. Definitely smile, and it makes people interested and keep their focus, and so it's important to smile. And Emna said, with the tone, yes, use your voice effectively. There are, again, you can read about it further, but use your voice effectively. You can speak sometimes a bit louder. You can speak sometimes a bit quieter. That's fine, but you need to use your voice. Fantastic. So yes, during the presentation, connect with your audience by making, concentrate on your core message. Remember, at the end of the day, what you want to give them is your main message. You already during the planning, even before planning, you thought about what this message would be. So throughout the presentation, make sure to focus on this message. And of course, relax, breathe, and enjoy. Really, I know how stressful presentations can be, and I know that it's sometimes nerve-wracking, but if you've done your preparation, if you've rehearsed, you're ready for your presentation. So during that, really, just relax. There is nothing else you can do. You cannot add another slide. You cannot change the people. You cannot change the audience. You cannot change yourself. Breathe in, breathe out, and enjoy this time with the audience. Enjoy this time with people who are watching you, who are listening to you, who are there for you, basically. So this is a really important tip. And I know that it can be stressful, but do your best to just relax and enjoy. Fantastic. So these are the three things. I think these are really three main things whenever you're giving a presentation, because I will tell you why at the end of this presentation, why I think these are the main points. Yes, right. So Lobna also says that it's important to manage your space, your posture, and your voice. Definitely, it is really important how you're standing and how you're talking. Right. So now let's look at some language that you can use for your presentation. And we'll start with the first. Introduce yourself and the topic. And here are some of the phrases that you can use with, let me just change something. Okay, so these are some of the phrases that you can use to introduce yourself and the topic. Let me, have you seen these phrases before? Have you used them before? If there is something you're not sure about, please feel free to ask me in the comments. But it's quite, there's a quite common phrases and they're quite useful. So I tried to look for some, because, you know, like very often when teaching English, there are standard, my name is Irina, and I would like to talk about this, right? And I would like, so I tried to find some less, maybe not less common, but more natural phrases, right? So I'm delighted to be here today. Yes, so that's something that you can say. And let's get the ball rolling. And again, this phrase, if we go back, think about your audience. Probably with the investors, or especially in the formal environment, because again, if you think about your audience, in some audience, it won't be acceptable to be informal, right? And this phrase, let's get the ball rolling, is definitely an informal phrase, fairly informal. It's fine for the presentation, but you need to consider your audience. For example, for Japanese clients, that I would avoid that. With Americans, definitely, yes. Americans are quite informal, so it's fine to use it with them. Again, I really like this phrase. I would like to take this opportunity to talk about, because again, it shows that you feel that it's an opportunity for you to talk to the audience. It's just a nice message, I think. Great. So next thing, so here are some phrases, right? And let's move on. After introducing yourself and the topic, you will usually talk about the structure of the presentation. Again, why you need to talk about the structure and why you need to explain the structure, because people are, it's easy for people when they know what is going to happen, when they kind of ready for listening, so they know what's going to come next. You know at what point you're going to talk about something, so make sure to introduce the structure. And again, here are some phrases that you can use. You can say, I'd like to give you a brief outline for my presentation. The presentation is divided into 4 main sections, or you can say divided into 4 parts, or you can just say, we'll look at this first and then at this and finally at this. Okay, so do give a short outline and do explain the structure. Fantastic. Moving on, and here, make clear transition. So what I just said, moving on, that was me making a transition to the next point. So one of the phrases, you've probably heard this before, but there we go, moving on. By giving transition, you tell the audience that you finished one part and you are going to the next part. So they make a they mentally understand and they get ready that you're finished with this point and you're about to talk about the next point. So here are some other phrases, again, for nice and smooth transitions, right? Again, you can start, right? You can, before starting your presentation, moving from the explanation of the structure or from the first point of your presentation, you can also say, before I start, does anyone know, right? You can ask a question, the audience, right? Like, remember, like I did with the 10, 20, 30 rule, right? I said, does anybody know that? So this creates some curiosity in the audience. They want to know the answer, especially if they don't know. Or if they know the answer, they want to get some confirmation. So important. Great. You can summarize by saying, summarize short parts, right? And making the transition. So we've looked at this, and this. And this leads me to the next point. So these are some phrases you can use for transitions. Or let's now turn to. Right. So let's get to the next point. Again, me making a transition. Try to impress your audience. Try to find something at which point the audience will go, wow. Okay. Maybe it might happen once or twice, but at some point, say or do something that will impress your audience. It's always, hopefully I'm doing my best to impress you guys, but we'll see if it works well. Right. So you can say things like, the product I present is extraordinary, right? And, oh, this is a really cool device. Again, really cool device is quite informal, and I wouldn't use it necessarily in a formal presentation, but you can definitely use it when presenting to the American audience, because in America, as I said, people are fairly informal in the presentation and the attitude. And actually, talking about in American presentations, you often start with a story, you tell a story, or you tell a joke. So that's quite common in a presentation in the American culture. Not as much in the British culture. It's a bit more formal. Great. So again, this video is awesome. This is an outstanding example. So try to wow your audience, draw their attention to something extraordinary, to something amazing, to something fantastic in your presentation. Great. And definitely body language is important. But when you are online, like me now, you cannot see my body. So it's important to have probably like you instead of the body language, you use your mimics, right? You can use your hand like I'm doing right now. But also try to smile and have an alive face, right? Moving and doing something instead of the body. Right. So next point, give examples. Again, instead of the traditional, for example, you can use these phrases. I really like the last one. To illustrate this point, and you can continue with examples here. Great, but as an illustration, again, a great phrase to replace the common for example or for instance. So do use examples. Examples are fun and interesting, and brings whatever you're saying, brings it kind of relates probably to people, like people relate to real life situation, to real examples more than some theory. Great. Lobna said, try to use touch emotions. Yes, Lobna, I will get back to that. Lobna, you are amazing, and thank you. I will get back to that point. Describe your data. Yes, whenever you use graphs, whenever you use diagrams, if it's a picture, make sure to describe it. Don't just put it there. Use a couple of phrases that you can to describe that. And here's some of them, but my favorite is let the figures speak for themselves, right? So if you have a graph and you say, let the figures speak for themselves. And immediately, what I also, if I give some data, I always make a short pause and maybe, I don't know, 20 to 30 seconds. I want to give my audience the opportunity to look at the figures and think about them and think what they represent. Uh, yes, yes, great. Involve the participants. Yes, definitely involve the participants. It's important, and try to involve them as much as possible. Great. Emphasize. I would like to draw your attention to this point. It's really important to emphasize, right? It's really important to draw people's attention to points that are important in your presentation. They won't notice until unless you tell them. And these are some phrases you can use. Finally, wrap up your presentation. In the wrap up, we talk about the short summary. You summarize what we've talked about. So for example, today we've talked about some different tips on how to deliver your presentation, what to do in your presentation. And we've talked about different language that you can use in your presentation, right? And again, some phrases that you can use to wrap up. And this is leading me to also wrapping up my presentation. And it's not it for me, but I am about to finish up. Great. So before we end, right? So I was talking about a few things that you do after the presentation. Couple of things that you, of course, you will answer the question, but it's also good to connect with people. So whenever I go to conferences, I like to talk about the presentation. I like to hear what people thought, because it gives me an idea of what kind of information they would like to have, what more information they'd like to receive, how I can improve my presentation if I'm giving it next time. So I like to again connect with the audience, thinking about the audience before you start, and connect with it during and continue after. And today I'd like to wrap up by this quote, and Lobna, yes, that's what we what you mentioned before, and what I would like to end this presentation with is, oh, oops, wrong slide. There we go. Right. So people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. It's a fantastic quote by Maya Angelou, and she was an American writer and activist. So you can further, if you don't know, feel free. Fantastic quote. I really like her. And I've loved this because really, how often have you gone to a boring presentation and you won't remember what they said there, and you won't remember what you will just remember, oh my God, you'll come out and then the first phrase, oh my God, this was so boring. And now think about a fun presentation where you enjoyed the speaker, enjoyed the talk, and again, you will leave it thinking, maybe you won't remember anything that the person said. Maybe you won't remember what you did during that, but you really, really will remember how you felt. Like if there was a joke, you'll remember that you had a laugh. And if you learned something, you will remember this feeling of curiosity and interest. So really think about that and think about how you make your audience feel during your presentation. And for that, relax, prepare, relax, and enjoy. Great, guys. So that's all from me today. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And traditionally, I will wrap up by saying that Wall Street English is always there with you. And we are 100% online. So if you want to improve your English, if you want to prepare for your presentations and practice your presentations in English, Feel free to join us at any point. Just write in the comment that you're interested and we'll contact you with further information. Now, a couple of questions for traditionally for you guys to win a short trial. And as I said, I will get back to the 10, 20, 30 rule at the end of the presentation. So write in the comment what is the rule. So what is the 10, what is the 20, and what is the 30? And the person who writes it first will get a 2-week trial for him or herself or for their relative. So students, for your friends and relatives, you can get a 2-week trial, and those who are not our students, you can win a 2-week trial right now. Just write the answer. What is the 10, 20, 30 rule for presentations? Let's see how attentively you were listening. Nothing yet. I'm just looking at my phone, right? And nothing yet. But let's find out. Were you listening to me today? Were you here from the start? If you were, then you should remember what's 10, 20, and 30 is. 10 slides, 20 minutes, and 30 is the font. Yes, well done, Sabeh. Sabeh, you were first. So Sabeh, as far as I know, you are our students, so you can get 2 weeks for one of your friends or relatives or family members. Anybody, relative or family member, exactly the same thing, but there we go. Let me give you one more question for the next person is, what is our next event? Please write it in the comment, what is our next event? Yes, Delia, yes, Slim, you were right, just a little bit late. And it's so nice to know that you were listening to me and you paid attention. Oh, thank you so much. Right, one more question for you. What is our next event? Please write it in the comments. Again, person who writes first will get a 2-week trial for themselves or their family members. And where is my drum in? Let's see, nothing yet. It's very exciting and a bit nerve-wracking. I'm just fingers crossed for you guys to find it. Also, feel free, if you have any questions, you can ask me. I'll just wait a couple more minutes and we'll be wrapping up. But if you have any questions, you can definitely ask them while I'm here with you. Great. Right, so nothing yet. And nothing yet. Waiting for our next event. What is our next event? For people to attend. You can find it on our Facebook page in the section events. Just go to our Facebook page on which you're probably watching the live right now. And in the events, you will see the next event. Please. Wall Street English Tunisia student. Not in the student group, but for Wall Street English Tunisia. So this is the page where you're watching. English for financial sector. Exactly. Yes. Ines, are you our student or not? Ines Kazdagli. Oh my God, it's so hard to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, Ines, if I didn't pronounce it correctly. But yes, that's right. English for financial sector, that's our next event. It's a workshop and you can participate in it. To participate, just complete the form and you will get the link to participate. Uh, sector 4, sector 19. Yes. So it's on Tuesday. It will take place on Tuesday. Great. So Ines, you get 2 weeks for yourself if you're not a student, or 2 weeks for your friend or a relative if you are a student. Great. Thank you very much for being with me today. I hope it was useful. I hope you learned something new. I hope it gave you an idea. And further to practice giving presentation further, please join Wall Street English. I will be happy to be there with you. Guys, have a lovely weekend and see you soon. Bye.